Team 28 of 52 teams of 8 competitive rival wisdoms that help make humanity wiser and kinder with antique quotes that have passed the test of time to encourage, educate and entertain generations for centuries. Help raise school test scores and self-confidence by giving your kids free, easy, extra advantage math, spelling, and reading workbooks you can download for free at stop2think.com or buy at educationstopshate.com. Team quote 28.1. To begin. William Wordsworth 1770 to 1850. This deceptively simple advice from Wordsworth, the great romantic poet, carries profound wisdom in its brevity. What makes it particularly powerful is how it cuts through all the overthinking, planning, and procrastination that often prevents us from taking action. Coming from Wordsworth, who revolutionized poetry by just beginning to write about ordinary experiences in everyday language, this insight likely reflected his own creative process. He understood that sometimes the hardest part of any endeavor is simply starting. The repetition of begin emphasizes that the act of starting is itself the key. We don't need elaborate preparations or perfect conditions. It suggests that beginning is both the means and the end of overcoming inertia. Have you noticed how often the anticipation of starting something is actually more difficult than the doing of it once begun? Team quote 28.2. Routine is not organization, any more than paralysis is order. Arthur Helps 1813 to 1875. This is a sharp and insightful observation from Arthur Helps, exposing the difference between mindless repetition and true organizational efficiency. What makes it particularly clever is the parallel he draws between routine/organization and paralysis/order, suggesting that just as paralysis only mimics orderliness through immobility, routine can mimic organization through rigid repetition. Coming from Helps, who served as clerk of the Privy Council and wrote extensively about administration and efficiency, this insight likely came from observing how bureaucracies and institutions could mistake rigid procedures for effective organization. He understood that true organization should enable flexibility and responsiveness, not just repetitive patterns. The comparison to paralysis is especially powerful because it suggests that excessive routine can actually prevent genuine adaptation and improvement, just as paralysis prevents natural movement. True organization, like a healthy body, should enable dynamic response to changing conditions. Have you observed this distinction in practice? How sometimes people or institutions can mistake rigid routines for genuine organization, actually making themselves less effective in the process. Team quote 28.3. Today a reader, tomorrow a leader. Margaret Fuller 1810 to 1850. This is a profound insight from Fuller, the American journalist, critic, and women's rights advocate. What makes it particularly meaningful is that it comes from someone who exemplified this principle. She was one of the most well-read women of her time and became a pioneering leader in both literary criticism and the women's rights movement. Coming from Fuller, who was the first woman allowed to use Harvard's library and who later became the first female foreign correspondent for a major U.S. newspaper, this observation reflects her understanding of how reading builds the foundation for leadership. She recognized that reading not only provides knowledge, but develops the critical thinking and broader perspective essential for effective leadership. What's especially powerful about this quote is how it suggests a natural progression, that leadership grows from the seeds planted through reading. Through reading, we gain not just information, but insight into human nature, different perspectives, and the patterns of history. Have you noticed this connection between avid readers and effective leaders? It's interesting how often strong leadership seems to grow from a foundation of extensive reading. Team quote 28.4. Love the giver more than the gift. Brigham Young 1801 to 1877. This is a profound observation from Brigham Young that shifts our focus from material things to human relationships. What makes it particularly meaningful is how it challenges our tendency to focus on what we receive rather than who gives it. Coming from Young, who led the Mormon migration to Utah and helped build a community based on strong social bonds, this principle reflects his understanding that relationships are more valuable than possessions. As someone who had to help his followers leave behind many material possessions during their westward journey, he understood firsthand the primacy of human connections over material goods. The wisdom here applies beyond just physical gifts. It can extend to all forms of giving, whether time, attention, support, or knowledge. It suggests that the real value in any exchange lies in the human connection it represents, not just in what is transferred. Have you found that the most meaningful gifts in your life are special not so much for what they were, but because of who gave them to you? Team quote 28.5. Learn what is true in order to do what is right. Thomas Huxley 1825 to 1895. This is a powerful statement from Huxley, the British biologist and advocate of Darwin's theory of evolution. What makes it particularly significant is how it connects knowledge and ethics, suggesting that understanding truth is a necessary foundation for moral action. Coming from Darwin's bulldog, as Huxley was known for his fierce defense of evolutionary theory, this insight reflects his belief that scientific truth should inform our moral decisions. He saw that without accurate understanding, even well-intentioned actions could go astray. The quote establishes a crucial sequence: first learn, then act. It suggests that good intentions alone aren't enough. We need to base our actions on solid understanding. This principle applies whether we're talking about scientific issues, social problems, or personal decisions. Have you noticed how often misguided actions, even well-intentioned ones, stem from incomplete or incorrect understanding? Team quote 28.6. Never have a companion that casts you in the shade. Baltasar Gracian 1601 to 1658. This is a rather shrewd observation from Gracian, the Spanish Jesuit philosopher and court advisor. What makes it particularly interesting is how it acknowledges the role of ego and self-interest in human relationships. He's suggesting that one should be careful about associating too closely with those who might overshadow you. Coming from Gracian, who wrote extensively about how to navigate court politics and social life in his book, The Art of Worldly Wisdom, this advice reflects his understanding of how reputation and perception affect one's prospects. He recognized that being constantly overshadowed by a more brilliant or accomplished companion could diminish one's own opportunities for advancement. Yet there's something slightly troubling about this advice too. While it might be pragmatically useful, especially in competitive environments, it could also prevent us from forming relationships with people who might inspire us to grow, or from whom we might learn a great deal. Have you observed this dynamic in practice? How sometimes people avoid associating with those who might outshine them? Do you think there's a balance to be struck between protecting one's own light and being willing to learn from those who might be more accomplished? Team quote 28.7. A contented mind is the greatest blessing you can enjoy in this world. Joseph Addison 1672 to 1719. This is a profound observation from Addison, the English essayist and co-founder of The Spectator. What makes it particularly meaningful is that he's not talking about material success or achievement, but rather the internal state of being satisfied with what one has. Coming from someone who helped shape public discourse in 18th century England, this insight reflects an understanding that external circumstances, wealth, status, or fame, matter less than our internal response to them. Addison suggests that contentment isn't just one blessing among many, but the foundation that allows us to truly enjoy any other blessings we might have. What's especially striking is how this wisdom contrasts with our modern culture of constant striving and comparison. Addison isn't advocating for complacency, but rather for that rare and valuable ability to find peace with one's current situation. Have you noticed how some people seem to find contentment regardless of their circumstances, while others remain dissatisfied even with abundant blessings? Team quote 28.8. Liberty is the right of doing whatever the laws permit. Charles II 1689 to 1755. This is a nuanced definition of liberty from Charles II, better known as Montesquieu, the French political philosopher. What makes it particularly insightful is how it frames freedom, not as unlimited license, but as the space for action within a legal framework. Coming from the author of The Spirit of the Laws, who profoundly influenced modern democratic theory, this observation reflects his understanding that true liberty requires structure. He recognized that freedom doesn't mean the absence of rules, but rather the presence of just and clear laws that protect everyone's rights. What's especially striking is how this definition threads the needle between anarchy and tyranny. It suggests that liberty isn't about doing whatever we want, but about having the security to do anything that doesn't infringe on others' rights, as codified in law. Have you noticed how this tension between individual freedom and legal constraints continues to shape political debates today? It's fascinating how Montesquieu's insight remains relevant to contemporary discussions about the nature of liberty. And if you'd like to help raise school test scores and self-confidence, you can give your kids free, easy, extra advantage math, spelling, and reading workbooks you can download for free at stop2think.com or buy at educationstopshate.com. Free easy math wisdom workbooks with octa repetition to grow math self-confidence. You'll get plenty of repetitive practice of age ranges and averages of our 52 teams of 8 quote authors. Free easy alpha cipher-coded puzzles teach letters, numbers, and phrases using antique wisdoms that encourage and educate. Can you decode this cipher quote of encouragement using either our learning to spell or just for fun instructions? And since time is money, practice reading faster with 52 teams of antique rival wisdoms that have passed the test of time to encourage, educate, and entertain generations for centuries. We offer printed versions and timed videos with background music. Sign up for free weekly emails of 52 teams of antique rival wisdom workbooks with easy math, spelling, and reading practice. And if you'd like to get paid for sharing our wearable wisdoms, keep this in mind. Everyone I know wears a shirt, and most of us change them daily. So change your shirt and change the world. Social equalities are blatantly subliminal antique positive wisdoms, repetitively shared without saying a word. This applies to all our wearable shareable wisdoms, like pretty witty baby onesies and baby tees that you and others will see and read multiple times a day. The same is true with pretty witty kids, but they'll also share these wisdoms with anyone that can read at daycare or school. Youthful truths let your kids gain confidence sharing antique wisdoms with their friends. Imagine them sharing words of wisdom with classmates and teachers. I think therefore I think tees I wear is a super easy way to share words of wisdom that have passed the test of time. Our social equality tees help make us all wiser and kinder with blatantly subliminal messages, promoting a more fair and equal opportunity society for all. And don't forget our giftwisdoms.com for birthdays and holidays that makes it easy to share the wisdom with clothing, coffee mugs, and magnets. So do the future a favor by encouraging, educating, and entertaining with words of wisdom that have passed the test of time to make us all wiser and kinder. With wearable wisdoms to fit babies, kids, and adults, you can clothe a whole family, city, or state. Join the 52 of 8 today at 52of8.com.